Alrighty. So this is a new chapter in California history. It's called the Mission Life. And this is actually a really controversial, really complicated, serious moment in California history. So we're going to be reading a number of sources on the missions of California and hopefully having some good discussions about it. I also wanted to remind you, I've reminded you in a number of our videos here, but in this book, they refer to Native Californians as Indians, which, it's a debated term. I've said this before, even among Native peoples. So I just wanted to remind you of that. So here we've got the timeline. We're in the 1700s. The 18th century, 1771, Mission San Gabriel is founded. 1785, there's that word. Indians plan an uprising at Mission San Gabriel. 1824, Indians along the Central Coast turn away, Mission Life. So Mission Life. Now we're going to skip that part, but here is an example of the Mission Santa Barbara, which was founded in 1786. It was near the land of the Chumash people. I remind you, we studied the Chumash people down here. They're near Los Angeles. Santa Barbara is near Los Angeles. So you can see here the Christian cross, or the Catholic cross, really. Okay, and can you see this? Here we go. Okay, so this first section here, changes begin. Population in the California colony grew slowly at first. The missionaries worked hard to survive. In time, they brought more California Indians into the mission system. Indians provided the workers that the missions needed. Some Indians came to the missions on their own. Others were forced to the missions by soldiers. At the missions, priests taught the Indian families about Christianity and Spanish ways of life. They taught them new skills, such as how to take care of horses, cattle, sheep, goats, and chickens. The Indians learned about carpentry and metalworking as well. For the Indians, life at the missions was unlike their traditional ways of life. Before the arrival of the Spanish, most California Indians were hunters and gatherers. The Franciscan priests taught the Indians to farm. They grew food for the mission. This slowly changed the economy of California to one based on farming. An economy is the way people in a place or region use resources to meet their needs. Economy. This is a word maybe you've been hearing recently on the news, but it is the business and money of a people. The cultural ways of life of the Indians changed as well. When they moved to a mission, Indians became neophytes, or people new to the Catholic faith. They were not allowed to practice their traditional beliefs. Those who did could be punished, although many did so anyway. So this is a question here, if you want to just check in. How did the Spanish change the economy of California from one based on hunting and gathering? So we see that up in here where they talk about how they changed from being hunters and gatherers to being based more on a farming economy. And here's a picture up here of soldiers, priests, and Indians gathered together for prayer. So you can see the priest and the native peoples here praying. So here we are, work and prayer. Mission life for the Indians consisted mostly of work and prayer. In fact, each day started with prayer. At sunrise, the mission bells rang to call neophytes to church. Neophytes, we remember this word means new to the religion. Bells also rang when it was mealtime or time to begin and end work. There were many jobs at a mission. The Indians plowed and planted fields, dug ditches, and harvested crops. They also raised horses, cattle, sheep, goats, and chickens. Indian men built adobe houses. Indian women wove cloth and made soap. They cooked the meals and did the cleaning. Children went to church and school. They also weeded the gardens. At the bottom of this is the question, what did mission life for the California Indians mostly consist of? So here, if you wanted to check in to pause and on your understanding, you could pause the video here. What was life like for the Native Californians in the missions? What did they do? What were the men doing? What were the women doing? What were the children doing? Over here, next section, we have some Indians resist. Many Indians were unhappy with mission life and tried to resist, that means to fight back, or act against the missionaries. Some ran away, others revolted or fought against the missionaries. As part of a revolt in the 1770s, Indians burned the missions at San Diego and San Luis Obispo. Then, in 1785, a neophyte named Nicolas Jose and a Gabrielino woman named, not sure about this pronunciation, so I'm going to come over here, Toipurino, planned a revolt at Mission San Gabriel. The plan was discovered, and Jose and Toipurina were jailed. Some Indians were able to escape from the missions, but many were forced to return. The mission workers worried that Indians who left would give up Christianity. So the question here is, why did some Indians resist mission life? Can you go back here? And can you see the answer in this part? You can pause the video if you would like and check in about why they would be resistant here. Why would they want to fight back? And there's no words on this, but I'm going to take the video out so you can really see this image here of the mission. And if you'd like to pause the video, this would be a good moment to pause and check this map out. Let's see, let me clear. Check this map out here. Where is the church? Where are the priest's quarters, workshops, kitchen, storerooms, well, Indian huts, irrigation ditch, river? How was the water brought all the way from the river into the mission? And I'm just going to return the video here and get back to the reading. Only 2 more pages left here. Indian ways of life end. By the late 1700s, about 20,000 Indians lived at the missions in Alta, California. At the missions, they were expected to give up their old religious beliefs and customs. A custom is a usual way of doing things. Mission Indians were not allowed to wear their traditional clothing. They also could not hold the celebrations that were important to them. One of the most serious threats to the Mission Indians was disease. without knowing it. Some Europeans brought diseases such as smallpox, measles, and influenza. The Indians had no protection against these diseases, and their bodies could not fight them off. The diseases spread quickly and sometimes killed whole villages. After the deaths of many Indians at Mission Santa Clara, one priest wrote, "The missionaries had believed they were bringing a better way of life to the Indians of Alta California. Instead, their diseases had brought death to many Indians. After the first 75 years of life at the missions, only about 1/3 of California Indians remained." So this is a really serious thing that we are learning here, and I want to highlight this with a little drawing because this is also connected to what we are experiencing here right now. This disease, a disease or an illness is another word, infirma in Espanol, was very serious at this time. It was called smallpox. And it killed many native peoples. And the thing is that we, in our body, we today, we get, this is maybe not the best drawing, but we get shots, okay? We call this a shot. An injection is a more academic word for it. And these are very, very important. These are vaccinations, is what we call them. Vaccinations. And they're very important. And when you were a baby, you got a vaccination for this disease called smallpox. I know you did. It is the law. You had to have it. I had it. We all had it. And then we don't die from this disease. We just will not die. And in this time period, the Europeans, all of the people from Spain, they did not have vaccinations, but instead they lived in Europe where there were many people who had smallpox for hundreds and hundreds of years. So they would get sick and they would give it to each other and then they were okay. But when these people, when they came over to California, if this is California, okay? They came from, this is Spain. They came all the way to California. And the native Californians, they had never had smallpox before. And so they got very sick and they died. And as it said in the reading, that's a bad example. If we were going to take a fraction bar, okay, and we were to divide it here into thirds, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. They said 1/3 of native Californians, they are still here. That means 2/3 of the native Californians, they died from the smallpox. So if this question here, how were California Indian ways of life affected by Spanish settlements? Well, how did their lives change from this experience? You could talk about not just about the sickness here, but you can also talk about, were they allowed to wear their clothing? Were they allowed to wear their traditional clothing? Were they allowed to have their celebrations, beliefs, and customs? I just want to show you a few details here. Sickness is always with us, and I fear it is the end of the Indian race. What can we do? This is from the priest in the mission. I wanted to show you also, this is a graph that is very upsetting. You can see so it goes back to this drawing I did here showing that 2/3 of the native Californians, they died as muerta because of this situation. You can look here Before the Europeans, look how many, 300,000 native Californians. And then the Europeans come in 1800, there are now 100,000. Yes, many, many were killed, but many died from this disease I was talking to you about. Many died from smallpox. And look, in 1850, it's down to about 80,000. And then 1900, it's down to about 25,000. So I do want to you to answer this question for sure in writing if you can. How did the mission system affect the ways of life of California Indians? I think you could write at least 4 or 5 sentences about how the missions changed the life of California Indians. And if you want to stay for just one more minute, I'm going to read to you this story, Children in History, Pablo Tac. This boy here is a native Californian boy, and I'm going to read you his story. It's very short. Pablo Tac, a Luiseno Indian, was born at Mission San Luis Rey in 1822. Tac was considered an excellent student by the priests at his mission. At the age of 10, he was sent to Italy to receive special schooling. While in Europe, Tac wrote a diary about his life at the mission. The diary told about how the Indians' way of life had changed after the Spanish arrived. Tac dreamed of becoming a missionary himself. However, he became ill with smallpox in 1841. Pablo Tac died before he reached the age of 20. Oh, well, that's a bummer. Well, I didn't mean to read that sad story to end our time together, but I hope you guys are well and staying cheery in this crazy time we live in California history. Bye-bye.